Welcome to Entrepreneurial Entrails for some short stories on the guts and glories of being an entrepreneur. Hey, it's Elizabeth Plouffe with Entrepreneurial Entrails, and I'm a little bit late, although if you're just, doesn't really matter, but this is Get to Know Me Friday. And this is something I highly recommend to everybody who's trying to build a business, and no matter how you do it. One of the things that I really respond to on websites when I'm researching companies to work with, and I mean that when I'm looking for vendors, when I'm running an event and I'm looking for people to supply to the event or what have you, I do check out their about page. I check out what they share, if they've got profiles of their staff, and I am more likely to go with people who provide that information up front, because in a small way they're making themselves vulnerable, but they're also making themselves personable and relatable, and I really appreciate that. And don't get me wrong, if I get to know the company and they suck, well, I mean, it doesn't matter, how great your personal story is or how much you've shared. You also need to be able to deliver. But having said that, I'm wondering if those who are willing to share about themselves and what drives them to be in the business that they're in and what drives them personally, I think that already speaks to their ethic and speaks to their ability to be honest in their dealings. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. My services are such that I help businesses, I help teach businesses how to use online tools effectively, affordably. I have rebelled, I guess that's the right word. It's bugged me for a really long time since I've had to start working with, and I've talked about this before, but it's a going issue for me. I have a real problem with people that hold clients hostage to their services. And anyway, so I try to be as honest as possible to make sure that I'm empowering people and giving them the right tools and services for their business to succeed, whether it's helping the existing person who's, doing the job for communications. Everybody runs out of their bag of tricks. Everybody's got set stuff that they know. And with every client that I've worked with, either they or somebody else who's also working on communications for their business have fantastic ideas. And why wouldn't I want to be a part of a situation where we're sharing? And likewise, why wouldn't I want to be in a situation where I can look at what somebody's doing and offer some outside perspective and things that I've run into. I just checked out a colleague's website, and she's using a thing called PageModo for Facebook. And I'm like, that's great. Didn't know about it. Looked into it. Might be purchasing it. I will now, in turn, share that with other people. Anyway, so that's the honest truth behind Get to Know Me Fridays, is an opportunity for not only for me to share who I am personally, but it also provides, I think, touch points for people to have conversation and relate to. So today is the places I've lived. So people often ask me, which I find kind of funny. They ask me, because my last name is Plouffe, they forget, and I shouldn't say that, that's not fair, but they assume that it's my maiden name, which it isn't. So here's another personal tidbit. So my last name used to be Barris, which, sounds pretty okay for the most part. But it was spelled Barrass. You can imagine the numerous and sundry connotations that people come up with, and they think they're quite witty, like I've never heard them before, about calling me bar ass or bear ass or whatever. Personal highlight with, high point with that was in high school getting called down to the office, and it was... So I've been out of high school for quite a while, but I still remember, would Elizabeth Barrass please come down to the office? And I'm thinking, okay, peeps, who in their right mind would go through life with a name like Barrass on purpose? Really? You put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. So anyway, that was super fun. So because my last name is now Plouffe, people make certain assumptions about where I'm from or what I've done, and I have to explain that it's my married name. And in an ironic twist, I actually was born in Quebec, and my husband was born in Toronto, which is kind of funny. So yeah, I was born in Quebec, in a little town called Saint-Jérôme, and it's the Hotel Dieu Hospital. And then we my parents lived in Rosemere, which at the time, so this is 1970, giving myself away, but 1970, they had emigrated, whichever one it is, from England. My family originates from Newcastle upon Tyne in England, so my parents are both Geordies. And if you know anything about the Geordie accent, imagine being a Geordie, and my parents had been in Canada for a few years at that point, so I would imagine it softened because my older brother was born in Toronto. But then they moved to Montreal, and it was a Franglais kind of community because on our street alone, you had the Couillards and the Patricks, but you also had the Euskadises and a wide variety. So and the Crooks, and that's a last name, not a profession. And so we've known these people for years and years and years. We're still in touch with them now, which is really cool. But from Quebec, we moved to Michigan, Battle Creek, Michigan. And if anybody knows what Battle Creek, Michigan is famous for, we moved there because my dad was a tea taster for Salada tea. So he would do like the big old swish and spit to make your Salada tea taste lovely. And, who knows, to this day, it could still be the same blend that my dad had a hand in creating. Then he worked for Kellogg's. So we moved to Battle Creek, Michigan because Kellogg's had a head office there, and Michigan was, Battle Creek anyway, was the cereal capital of the world or something like that. So then we moved back to Ontario. I lived in Oakville for 9 years, and then moved to Burlington when I was 17 and have lived in Burlington ever since. So I guess, golly, 29 years now, lived in Burlington, which is in the Halton region. It's totally cool. Never want to move away from here. Love Burlington. Amazing. But in the meanwhile, with living in Burlington, I also went to college 3 times. The first time I went to Seneca College for travel and tourism. I was going to be a flight attendant. That didn't work out well. But I lived in King City for a year, and also lived in Toronto for a year in an all-female residence. And that's a whole another blog post because me and a building full of estrogen, I would rather pluck out an eyeball than ever do that again. Second year for Seneca College was in a house full of women. I got to tell you, even in a reduced state, it didn't go very well. And I have a lot of great girlfriends, but it's kind of like when you're a grandparent, you have grandkids and they come over and you can spoil the kids and then you can give them back. That's sort of the same thing with women. I like them in short bursts. Living together, not so much. So lived in all of those places, have traveled quite extensively through Ontario, Quebec, and the east coast of Canada, down through down through the States, just down to Florida and stuff. And I was going to save travel too. Maybe I will save travel too for another Get to Know Me Friday, but I've gone to Europe, gone through the US, now going to make my way through Never Eat, Shred or Eat, the west side of Canada. But one of the things my husband and I talk about, right? So Burlington, from our perspective, I think, is going to be our forever home. My husband moved every year up until the age of 16. So really hard for him. But the advantage, I guess, with both of us having moved, me across borders and him across Ontario, is that we're pretty adaptable from a living perspective. We definitely know what we like and what we don't like, but we're pretty easygoing. You can drop me in a cottage somewhere. You can drop me in a tent somewhere. I'm pretty good to go. Same with my husband. But we have talked about our dream home. And that's one of the things my current pursuits as an entrepreneur is hopefully going to help achieve. So our dream home, if you know anything about Frank Lloyd Wright, he has a famous house. We've got many famous houses, but one of the ones I absolutely adore is his waterfall house. It's absolutely stunning. And the entrepreneur who originally was going to have the house built wanted it down at the end of the waterfall. And Frank Lloyd Wright was recovering from a pretty bad time in his life, self-induced, mind you, but he decided to build the home at the top of the waterfall. And he not only built the home at the top of the waterfall, he cantilevered a quarter of it over top of the waterfall. So you can literally walk through the house, walk down a flight of stairs, and you're standing on top of the waterfall, which how freaking awesome is that? So that's part of my goal right now for my business and for the goals that I'm setting for myself is that, in the next 4 years, once the kids are, hopefully getting out the door at some point, my husband and I have very similar architectural tastes, which is really handy. So we're going to start looking for what we hope will be our forever home, our retirement home, more so on a one level. But that's what really kind of drives me in my business is what I want in the next 5 years. Definitely helps me to keep my passion going for what I'm doing and get through the hard times. And I'm going a little over today, but I think this is something that would be worthwhile for anybody to have a look at. Have a look at where you've been. Don't dwell on it, but look at where you want to go. Set those goals. I'm currently reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And it's definitely changing the way I'm looking at my business and how I'm going to use my personal goals to continue to drive that. So anyway, that's a little more about me. So I'm a born Quebecer from English parents. I have a t-shirt that says made in Canada with parts from Great Britain, which is very true. Love my English roots, love my English family, and yeah, that's pretty much me. So I hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope you'll take a moment to look at your goals in the next 5 years and use them to continue driving you and your business forward. And if you have a particular dream, if you have something that you've been using to achieve your goals, I'd love to see it in the comments or shoot me a message. And we can learn from each other, which would be great. So we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.